Game Builder Studio.
Now we need to set up the collision logic for the obstacles and the food items. And there are three different types of objects that are going to collide and interact with each other. So we need to set up three different object types. Let's go to the settings panel and I'll go to engine, and we'll add three different types here: an obstacle, the hero, and food. Now that those are created, we can go to the obstacle spatial properties, and those types show up in the object type list. So we want to label this obstacle as an obstacle, and we want it to collide with only the hero. Now this is how we're going to set up collision filtering. We don't want the obstacle to collide with the food item, only with the hero. So we set those two types there, and I'll go to the food item and I'll label the food as a food type, and we only want it to collide with the hero. I'm going to also go to the hero character spatial, and I'm going to label this as the hero, and it's going to collide with both the obstacle, and I'm going to hold the command, or you could hold the control key to select the food item as well, the food type. We'll set up later different components to listen for the collisions on each different item, because we want the hungry hero character to enter its hurt state when it collides with the aircraft, and we want it to collect an item or collect points once it eats the food item. Also need to make sure that both the obstacle is set to be a sensor. So we got to check the sensor flag on the spatial properties and on the food item, because we don't want these guys to simulate. I just want them to be listeners for collisions. I think it's also important to note here that the settings here in the collision shape settings are based on a per shape basis. So if I add additional shapes in here, you'll see that the settings will change based on what shape is selected. So you got to make sure that if you have multiple collision shapes, that you have the one that you want to apply these settings to here selected up in the preview area. Now let's add a logic or a rules component to the food item and call it hero collision. We want to update the score, and we want to destroy this item when it collides with the hero. So we're going to add a collision rule here. When the collision event is started with the hero object type, then we want to update the score. So we want to change the score property on the score text object. And we're just going to increment it by 1. So we're going to use an expression to add 1 to that existing score, and you'll notice this is a direct reference. And an expression, the direct reference uses entity dot the name of the entity, the component name, then the property name. And I'll also update the display, because I did not bind the property, the score property, to the text renderer. I'll go to the score renderer, and I'm going to update the text property with the reference, the value of the reference of the score property. And then last but not least, I want to destroy this entity, this food item entity, when it collides, after it's done those other two actions. Now the obstacle also needs to have some collision logic when it collides with the hero. We want it to go to its damage state. So we're going to add a condition here to listen for a collision started with the hero object type, and we're going to change the state on the obstacle state machine, the current state, to a string of damaged. Now if I run this, you should be able to see the aircraft adjust its frame to the damaged state, and the food items are being destroyed when they collide with the hero.